Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Can I say something first? The expectations right now are a little too high. So don't be disappointed. I'm average trying to get better, just so you know. And my team, some of my team is sitting back there at the table. So if you want to know the So if you want to know the truth, talk to them. I'll tell you the truth.
I think you'll tell the truth. That's the truth speak.
Okay. I'm going to try. But I get excited sometimes, so.
That's okay. Ready?
So am I supposed to look at you or look at them?
Usually.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
Relax.
I'm just kidding.
So let's get started with a little bit of background about you. If you could just give us a little bit of, where you grew up, maybe. Just a little peek into that childhood.
Childhood, okay. Wow, that's scary. How many people have played in oil ditches? Nope. One person, Carl?
I used to work for the electric company, so I used to play around.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a little town called Taft and spent a lot of time in Cuyama, out in the middle of nowhere, but basically oil country. So I grew up playing in oil ditches. But I was one of those kids that I loved school, I loved being outside, I loved learning. Moved to Orange County, actually, when I was in 7th grade. But I was in this super, super small community, and then we moved to Orange County to Yorba Linda. And as a kid, I was so frightened to move, because the LA people, in our minds, were crazy people. Like, the LA people are going to come and eat us. It was seriously, scary. So when we moved to Yorba Linda, it was like, oh my God, I'm moving to the big city. Anyway, moved to Yorba Linda, went on, what do you want to know?
Everything.
Everything.
Who's the person that you consider as a role model early in life?
Early in life. So definitely that would be my grandmother. So my grandmother, she owned her own business. She basically was a real estate and insurance person in this little community. Owned her own business, had a complete growth mindset, and really believed she could do anything, and believed that we could do anything, and believed that we needed to do anything and everything that she said. So I did a lot, but she was just an amazing rock in my life.
I love Grandma.
She was awesome.
How did your life experiences influence you to pursue a career in education? And was there a pivotal moment, something that said, this is where I need to go? These are the people I need to help.
You want the true story?
Yes.
Okay.
Truth seat.
True story is I needed a job. Because I grew up, come on guys, you're supposed to laugh. I'm like, wow. No, that honestly, I grew up, my mom was a teacher, and my mom used to always tell me, son, you'd be a great teacher. You love to learn, you love people, you'd be just an amazing teacher. And I was I remember being 16, 18, looking at her I would never be a teacher, ever. I'm gonna be rich. Just like a snotty 16 or 18-year-old. So went to college, got a degree in applied math, thought I was smart, thought I was gonna go become an aerospace engineer. There was no aerospace engineer jobs to get, so my father-in-law at the time said, well, why don't you try teaching? And by the way, you could never get a job here in this school district because they only hire people that actually know how to teach and have master's degrees and blah, blah, blah. So he gave me a challenge. So then I went down literally that day and got hired as a math teacher. And just thought, okay, this will get me through until I go do my real thing. But I had this room of 6th graders, and I can remember the day. It was my first or second day teaching. This room of 6th graders that had 5 different teachers that year, and it was they all hated me, they all hated school, they all hated everything. And I was but I started to see these light bulbs go on, and I was hooked. It was crack for me. Wow, if I could get these kids to love math and to love school, how amazing is that? What's better than that? There's nothing better in life than that. So that happened so quick for me. And then I was okay, this is all I'm gonna do my rest of my life is I'm just going to be in education. I'm gonna be a teacher. That's what I'm gonna do. And one of the things that I found is, and I loved those middle school kids because they were such a challenge. And then in the summers, I would actually teach high school, so I could teach like hard classes with calculus and that kind of stuff, just for fun. But
Just for fun?
yeah. We'll talk about crypto later, right? Dan? This guy's a nerd.
There are many lessons learned throughout one's journey. Is there one lesson that stands out for you that's been the most impactful, and that maybe you've also had wished you learned earlier, that you could have applied earlier?
Good question. Well, it's interesting. This was a lesson I learned as a teacher. And it's funny, I learned it as a teacher, but then when I started business, I didn't think about it in a business way until later. So one of the things I learned, because when you become a teacher, you talk to all the older teachers, and then they teach you how to do it. And it's basically like, well, if you can get them to be really quiet, then you're a good teacher. And so you start off thinking that's what it means to be a good teacher, is to keep all the kids quiet in their seats. But what I learned really quick is no, that's not what it means. My thing was, if I can get every one of those kids to be a believer in what we're doing, believer in me, believer in what we're doing, believer in what they're learning, and really be believers, then I can get a 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders. I mean, I used to tell people, man, I could literally take those kids to the roof and be like, hey guys, we're gonna run, it's gonna be cool, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna do it, we're gonna learn some math. Might be a little jolty when we hit the bottom, but I'm kidding, thank you, I'm kidding. They're like, wow, I haven't tried it with the employees yet, but it's only a 2-story building, it won't be that bad, you guys. But I learned that getting those kids to be believers. And so then when I started my first company, and then the second company, I was kind of, okay, well, I have to do it this way. I have to have all this hierarchical system, and you got to have command and control, and blah, blah, blah. And after I sold the second company, I said, you know what? I don't like that. I'm going to try something different. What if I could get everybody to be empowered? What if I could have everybody be a believer? What if we were all doing this together, and we get rid of all this command and control stuff, and it was really about us? What would that look like? And so, yeah, I wish I would have learned that earlier.
Let's talk about leadership. I really want to talk about that. I actually had a chance to meet with Lane, and I left like, wow, the office. I was like, this was like the most inspirational meeting I've had in a while. So let's talk about leadership, and what's the most important characteristic that every leader should possess?
I mean, that was easy. In my mind, it's all about being a servant. How do you serve your people? How do you listen and serve your people?
That's Are there certain traits for a successful leader, like specific traits that one might possess?
Yep. So I think that servant heart, which to me comes to humility. I mean, I see so many leaders that they think it's got to be all about them and what they know, and they got to be the smartest person in the room or whatever. They've got to have their ego built up. But to me, if you really have that servant heart and you're humble and you're a learner and you're a good listener, then you are going to be a great leader. I think one of the things, like for me, that's made such a difference is because I care so much about kids and so much about kids' success and making sure those light bulbs are constantly going on and making sure that that's something that we're attributing to or helping with, having that passion. Like, that's my passion. Like, every day I wake up and it's like, student and educator success. Like, how are we doing that? And when we're not doing that, it's like, oh, it's like a knife to my heart, Like, my team's like, yeah, that's why we look so tired. He's always like, but what about the kids?
Are there some steps that we can take, or I can take, or obviously any of us could take to become a better leader?
Lots of steps, yes. I mean, one of the people always ask me, like, well, so if I just could read like one book, what would that be? What would be that book that you should say I should read to become a better leader? And I've read so many different leadership books, and the one in my mind that is like the best that I always go back to, that I tell people to read. It's called Principle-Centered Leadership by Stephen Covey. And anybody that's a leader in the room, if you haven't read that book, it is like spot on. And everything that I just mentioned, like if you went through, it's in that book. So when I read that book, I was like, this is it. This guy gets it. This is what you do. If you believe in empowering your people and you really are humble and a servant and you listen and you learn, it's going to happen.
So great leaders dare to be different. In your opinion, what are successful leaders doing differently?
Question. So, I mean, talking about like different books that I've read and like people that have inspired me. Anybody read Let My People Go Surfing? Anybody heard of that book by Yvon Chouinard? Nobody's read that book? What are you guys reading? Do we have any surfers in here?
Oh, that's it.
Wow.
No surfers. One.
Okay, I'm done. Who did you invite?
No, don't leave. Don't leave.
Who did you invite? I'm teasing. So Yvon Chouinard is the guy, he actually just recently died. He's the guy that founded Patagonia. And his passion was the environment. His passion was mountain climbing, rock climbing. And so he said, I mean, he basically started off by making these little things that you drove into the mountains so he could hike up boulders better. But he cared so much about the environment, he says, well, how would I make a company that makes cool stuff that really, helps the environment? So I think that idea of you've got to be passionate about something. Like, what are you passionate about? And not afraid to take risks and try new things to see what works. I mean, that's such a hard one, because when we started this new thing, and I said, hey, and I used the wrong word, so I don't use this word. I used the wrong word, and I said to our team, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to have managers. We're going to be flat. Because I could see it in my head really clearly, like how it had to be, and then I freaked everybody out, because sometimes I'm not a good communicator, right, guys? Like, Katie's looking at me like, yeah, wow. Did he freak everybody out? And that was yesterday. Anyway, but it's like, how do you communicate that effectively? How do you stick with it? How do you keep trying things, keep getting better, taking risks, trying things, improving, etc.?
So what do you do daily to ensure the growth and development to continue to be a great leader?
So, good question. I think, the hardest thing to do, especially when you've had success, is to still listen. And to listen to everybody. I remember Mariana, raise your hand. So that's my new assistant. I haven't had an assistant all these years. I got this new assistant, and she's like a godsend. So anybody that doesn't have an assistant, get one. It was like, oh my God, I don't have to do calendar invites anymore. Oh, my life is so much better. I don't have to read junk mail anymore. Oh my God, my life is so much better. But I remember when Mariana started on her first day, we were getting ready for our big user conference. We had 1,500 people come to this user conference. We were working with like a coach to help us, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pull this off? And literally, it was Mariana's first day. And so the coach asked the team, well, what do you think about how we should do X, Y, and Z? And so Mariana was such a freaking stud. It was so cool. She just goes, remember that, Katie? She goes, well, I think you guys should do blah, blah, blah. And I was like, damn, that is freaking awesome that she felt empowered to be able to, say something to the CEO and all these people that have been in the company forever. And it was great feedback. And it was like, and for me to be able to listen and go, wow, that's really good feedback. We should think about that. Like, how do we do that? Yeah. How do we put that into action? So I think, especially once you're successful, it's hard to keep listening. And trust me, and they can all tell you, I'm not perfect at that, guys. I have so many things I need to work on to get better, but it's that waking up every day, like, how do I get better? Remembering why we're doing what we're doing, listening to folks.
So it's a constant, every day.
Every day. Reading stuff. I've read so many leadership books. I'm reading one right now called Turn Your Ship Around. It's a very, very cool book by Marquette. I won't go into that.
You might have to get a list of all the books you read. The success of a company oftentimes is a reflection of the core team. How have you built your core team? You kind of talked a little bit about it, and I don't know, I guess, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with the participation age. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and what that is to kind of give them like a feel of what you do.
Well, first, for me, I really look at everybody on our team. Right now, we're pushing like 200 people. I really look at everyone on our team as a core team member. Like everybody on the team adds something to that team. But of that core team, I have folks that I meet with monthly. And most of those people are literally people that have just, they've kind of been with me just over time. Some of those people have been with me, 20 years. Some have been there 15 years, and some have been there 10. Some have been there 2 or 1. So it's really just been, hey, here's our mission, here's what we're doing in life, here's how we're trying to do it. You want to join this? Oh, you want to? Sweet, okay. Well, here you go. Here's a big job. Derek back there is smiling because we just had this conversation yesterday. He's like literally been with us for a year as a product manager. Came into like a lot of things to do and has done like an amazing job, like turning around, what could have been like a really stressful thing and doing an awesome job at that. So it's just believing in people, bringing in people, and holding on to people. We were having a conversation over here about what's the life cycle of someone in a company, like in a tech company, and somebody was saying it was 3 years, and then Aaron was saying, no, it's probably less than that. And I was like, oh my God, give me some wood to knock on, because we rarely have people leave us. I can't imagine if my team was leaving every 3 years. That would be brutal. Like for me, it's like, hey, we want to find great people and keep great people and make sure, we're just all growing and learning and changing and getting better together.
And talking about keeping great people, like what are some of the things that you do to attract them, but also to keep them engaged, keep them wanting to stay with you? Like what are you doing differently than everyone else?
Well, I think one of the things, because we have this mission of promoting student and educator success, and that's really what we're doing, and it's a big problem. Like, how do you really help that problem? People come in and they're like, wow, you guys really believe in this. You really are trying to do something good for the world. It's not just about making widgets or making money. You're trying to make a big difference in the world. So a lot of people that we attract are people that have that common mission. They want to do something good for the world. And then with our participation age kind of ideas, which basically, and I didn't answer that before, so you got to keep me on the straight now.
Every word, I'm just like, okay.
Oh, God.
I want to take notes.
So the participation age, I mentioned this idea of flat. So when I started this company over in 2009, I said I'm tired of like this hierarchical structure. I'm tired of like them and us. I want this to be us. And I had belonged to a CEO group called Convene, and we would always, as CEOs, we would talk about, man, if our people could just be owners, if they could just feel like I feel, they just buy in and be an owner. So I just kept thinking about, like, what does that mean? How do we get people to buy in? What does it mean to empower people? What does it mean, what has been the problem? I look back at my career and I said, okay, what was the problem when I was a teacher in the school? What was the problem when I was an administrator in a school district? What was the problem when I was a county administrator, when I taught at the university, when I worked for a huge billion-dollar company? Like, what were the problems there? And I kept coming back to, one of the problems was this big hierarchical structure that we have. That, well, I can't do anything because I got to go to my boss, who then, he's going to go to his boss, and after he goes to his boss, then he's going to let his boss know if my boss, and I'm like, huh? Right? So how do we get rid of that and really make it about us and empower people so that Mariana can come in on her first day and have a great idea? Would that happen in very many companies? Like somebody come in on the first day and have a good idea? Would they even be able to speak on the first day, let alone have a good idea, right? But it to be okay that she can come in the first day and have a good idea? So it's really, how do you have leaders get rid of command and control, have people that are empowered, and then everybody benefit. Because that was the other thing. It's like, well, as an owner, I want people to be an owner because I want them to wake up at 3 in the morning sweating like I do sometimes. I swear, I keep looking at my team and they're like, yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Lane. I'm glad you want us to wake up at 3 in the morning sweating. Yes, thinking about Illuminate, that's why you should be sweating. Anyway, but to do that, but I thought about, well, as an owner, I also have a lot of benefits, right? Like if we're doing well, financially I'm going to do well. Well, I'm going to be more successful. I get to make big decisions. I get to be creative, etc. Well, how could everybody do that? How could everybody benefit? Like owners usually get the best benefits, right? The best vacation policy, the best insurance, la la la, right? And it's usually the owner, the executive team, and then the salespeople, because the salespeople get commissions. So if they're doing well, they get high salaries. So I said, well, what if we did that for everybody? What if we're doing well, we're profitable? What if I gave everybody the best insurance and I paid for their insurance, medical, dental, for them and their families? Paid for it 100%. They didn't have to pay for anything. What would that be? What if, I've been to financial, because once you sell companies and things, then you have financial people that want to talk to you and they tell you like, oh my God, you have to have long-term disability care, or you probably shouldn't sleep at night. And you have to have life insurance. Well, what if I gave long-term disability care and life insurance to all my people at no cost? What if we actually had a deferred comp plan or a pension plan that we put into? Owners get that, right? What if we did that for everybody? What if at the end of the year we said, hey, we've been profitable, we've all done this together, so what if half the profits went back to the employees? And what if you sat down at the end of the year and said, okay guys, here's everything, here's the books. I'm going to open them up, CFO and I sit in front of the whole company, and we go through the books, and we say, okay, here was the revenue, here was our expenses, here's what went to employees, here's what went to investment, and just said, well, if this is about us, shouldn't you be that way, right? So that's all the stuff that we do. To not just say, oh, I want you guys to feel like owners, and I want you to be empowered. It's like, no, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And that's been like, I wanted Scott, I forgot to ask Scott, I wanted Scott to come up with a number to tell me like, how much money over the last, we've been doing this since we became profitable in 2010. And I wanted Scott, my CFO, to give me how much money has gone back to the employees in the idea of like incentive pay over the last 6 years. And it's got to be something nearing like $20 million. Like I own the company 100%, like literally $20 million that I could have put in my pocket that went back to the employees. Because it's really about us, it's got to be really about us, right? Which is not an easy thing to do, but man, is it so cool to do that and have it really be about us and not just about the top 4 people or 5 people or 12 people or whatever. Is that too much?
No, that's awesome. I love that.
Trust me though, when you have like that big money sitting there and you do that, this is not an easy thing. I make it like sound like, oh yeah, no, this is like, okay, so what are you gonna do, Lane? It's like the devil and the angel kind of on your shoulder. What are you thinking? Do you know what you could do? To those people, what are they gonna do with that money? Don't you need it more than them? Seriously, but it's like, wait a minute, this is about us. If this is about us, isn't this what you signed up to do? And why, what are you gonna do with more money anyway? Like, you can only have so many houses and so many nice cars, and blah, 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 and all that stuff's boring and it's just a pain in the ass anyway. And honestly, it is. I'm telling you, it is.
Well, definitely,
Sorry, I get passionate about this stuff.
I love that whole thing. Like, I want you to do me a diagram so I can, really, make sure I implement all of that as I grow my company, right?
Can we use the media company for the diagram?
Yes. I want to talk a little bit, you talk about, the different, not so much levels, but I want to kind of talk about titles. We've kind of talked about that. Yeah. And that's always been a struggle for me. Yeah. Like, everyone always wants a title. Like, they always go like, well, what's my title? And I'm like, do we have that title? I don't know. How does that work? Like, how do you address that, or is that?
I know titles
It's
are
frustrating. And then, do you earn a title? Do you just get a title? Like,
Do
you
you
make
want
one up?
incentive pay or a title?
Yeah, I like incentive.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Right. So titles. Well, when we first started with this, I was like, I don't care about titles. What do you guys want to be? I don't care. So then everybody was chief. So we had chief. We had like we had a bunch of weird chief titles. So it was like chief educational research officer, chief blah blah blah. And I was like, how are we going to do that? How's that scale, right? So then at one point we said, well, let's get rid of titles. And everybody's like, yeah, why do we need titles? But then it's hard to get rid of titles because then certain people are like, well, but if I need a title, what do I put on LinkedIn?
I was just going to ask you that. I was thinking about
And
that.
so some of our people said, well, I'm just going to put Illuminator on LinkedIn. Or maybe I'll put my role on LinkedIn, like I do implementation, or I do sales, or I do support. But we have a lot of people that just put Illuminator. That's their title, is Illuminator. I even got rid of, like, off my email signature, I got rid of CEO. I'm not a CEO anymore. I got rid of that off. It's like, okay, well, if we're not going to have titles, I'm not going to have a title. So I'm not going to put CEO on my stuff anymore, on my email. But there have been, we work in the education field, which is super hierarchical, right? So superintendents, and then assistant superintendents, and directors, and so, if you go into you want to get a meeting with the superintendent, it's like, well, I'm an illuminator. And they're like, you're like, what? Because I'm used to talking to like senior VPs from Microsoft or whatever. So, some of our people have had to like take on these titles, but then it's caused angst on the teams. Like, wait a minute, why's he got to be da da da, or she's got to be this? And so I don't think we have it figured out perfectly, but for the most part, we don't really have titles. We have like roles. People kind of know people's roles. And then I always tell people, like, but what if I want to get another job someday? I'm like, what? Did you just say you want to get another job someday? I'm like, this is Hotel California, baby. The old people got that joke. This is the Eagles song, you never be. Oh, you got it, Stacey.
So how do you foster creative and innovative thinking within your company? I know you talked to me about you guys have like different teams, and teams perform and do things together. Like, how do you like foster that? How do you get them to like be creative? Are they just come in and they're all creative and innovative, or do they?
Well, I mean, really, it starts there. I mean, I think we've done such a great job like attracting and getting great people, and I think a lot of that has to do with like, well, this is our culture, and this is what we believe, and I think some of that starts with like how you think about people. It was almost like when I go back to my students. So if I thought of my students as like, oh my gosh, no good scoundrel sixth graders, right? Then what are they going to be? They're going to be that. But if they weren't that, guess what? Everybody wants to learn. Every kid, I don't care where they come from, they want to learn and they love to learn and they get super excited when they learn stuff. And it's so cool to see that go off in their head. Whether we're talking like a kid from a full-on gang family that I used to have in my classrooms, or whatever. I give you so many examples of that. But that's the same thing with people in general. People want a purpose. People want to do well. So set up a way for them to do well. And so I feel like we try, and again, it's not perfect. Recently we've been talking about, okay, we're not looking for perfect, we're just looking for better. And let's keep getting better every day. But if you set up a structure where people don't have like people looking over their shoulder, and you do believe in them, and you do believe that people want to do well, and the people around them are listening, and there's not anybody putting them down, and you're able to be creative and be free, then I think all of those things just start to come. All right, does that make sense?
Yes. So company culture matters. It doesn't just happen on its own. We need to create it. Having a strong and clear culture can exert a positive effect on the people in the company. Can you share something that has worked best for you? Is there like I know you guys do a lot of charitable things together. You do a lot of things, obviously, with students and schools.
I think, honestly, it just comes back to what I've been talking about. I mean, it comes back to, we've got this mission, to create tools educators can use to promote student and educator success. And we talk about that all the time. And we're trying to have this very kind of everybody can be a leader in the company, and everybody can grow, and everybody can get better, and we don't need to take ourselves too serious. I mean, people like all the time are having fun, making fun of me, I'm making fun of them. People try to wrestle me in the office, things like that. That's a true story.
Nicole.
Too bad Nicole's not here. Yeah, Nicole, exactly.
I'll have to get talk to her after. So what's your why? Like,
Promoting student and educator success.
that's your why.
That's my why.
And has it been your why forever, or was it something that like kind of?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it started, for me, it started with student success. So, seeing those light bulbs go on for kids, and I thought that's all I would ever do. But when you're doing really well as a teacher, and for me, I had a lot of kids, and I was like riding a bike to school so my wife could stay home with the kids. They were like, hey, guess what? You could make a bigger difference and make more money if you became an administrator. And I was like, did you say more money? I wouldn't have to ride my bike to school, and I could make a bigger difference. So it started with students, but then when I became an administrator, it's like, wow, now this is really freaking hard, because other teachers, they need some help, And so, hey Katie, it's true. It's true. But it was at a different level, right? Like, how do I motivate and help teachers be better teachers to help kids? And then, moving on to being at the county. Now you're at a county influencing like hundreds of thousands of kids and thousands of teachers. And how do you do that? And then you're a company. How do you do that? So I think it's just kind of grown, but it's always been around that idea of student and educator success.
Balance is very important to the life of an entrepreneur. How do you find a balance with your family and also workplace?
Well, if you have a lot of kids and a wife and you actually like them, they force you to have balance. Because my little 6-year-old Piper, she'd be like, I don't want to break her heart.
Right.
But it's hard.
Well, do you cut off? Like, do you turn off, 5 o'clock, you guys, everyone goes home and there's no one at Illuminate, or is it illuminating through the night?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we're going to talk about this. Every year we have a retreat where we take everybody to the beach for 3 days, and we have, just company together time. And one of our best sessions was a work-life balance. And what does that mean? And it was so cool to have different people come up with different strategies of what that means. So for me personally, when I leave work, I make all of my phone calls that I haven't been able to make. So certain people know when that is, so they'll call me at 6 or 5:45. Anyway, I leave home, but when I get home, unless there's something crazy, I don't work at night. And so I'm just with the family, but then I love to get up early, so I get up early and have my time in the morning, and then work, and then but it's a struggle, and especially starting off, in 2009 when we were 7 people, it's tough. I mean, that's very, very tough to have a good balance. So.
Wow, 7 to 200.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of stakeholders.
I used to have brown hair. I used to look a lot younger. I'm only 33. That gets the best laugh. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Nice.
So what's next for Lane Rankin?
Good question. I mean, obviously, continuing with student educator success. But I've been thinking a lot about that. For me, it's really 2 things right now. It's student educator success, but it's also, because people are like, well, when we started doing this and we were 7 people, 10 people, 30 people, my CEO friends would say, well, how are you going to do this when you have 50 people? And I was like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Well, you're never going to go do this when you're 100. I'm sure you won't be able to do the same structure when you're 100 people. I'm like, okay, maybe not. Maybe we have to go back to EVPs, VPs, JVPs, direct Doesn't it sound horrible? Yeah. I guess unless you're the EVP. Anyway, maybe we'll have to go back to it. But it's like, well, we've made it now to 200 people still working. So how do we make that work when we're 1,000 people? How do we make that work when we're in, and we're not in 1,500 districts, we're in 10,000 districts? Like, what does that look like? How do we keep that going? And because it's amazing when I talk to like other CEOs about this kind of stuff, and they kind of look at me like, what? And I'm like, but I think it really works. I mean, look where we were in 2009. We're literally 7 people. We've surpassed our competition. Now we're 200 people. We're super successful. Our people actually like here. We have low turnover. Like, why wouldn't you guys do this? Like, why not do all these same things? Why not give? I mean, because my other thing is I've been thinking about this kind of stuff forever. I'm like one of those guys that always puts his foot in his mouth. Like back in the day when I was a teacher, I'd talk about the bad, horrible companies. Like, oh, companies, geez, wow. If they just took care of their people, the world would be a much better place. And then now you're an owner. It's like, damn, I say that. Just kidding, kind of. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, but you think about it. Think about owners and that executive level team, and you think about like this gap is growing, right, between like the 1%, everybody else. I mean, they talk about it all the time. The data's there, etc. Well, what would it mean if every company in the nation literally gave away half their profit? You're not giving it away. You're just sharing it with the people that got you there, right? So what if you just share it with the people that are getting you there? What would that mean for middle class? What would that mean for things like health insurance? What would that mean? So how do you get that? How can I get that message out there and really help people see that this could make a big difference, like socially for us as well?
You might have to start like a seminar.
I might have to start a seminar.
So you could teach CEOs. Yeah.
They're a pretty scary bunch. Any CEOs in here? Sorry if I offended you. Okay, sorry. You don't seem scary, sir.
So the last question I have for you tonight is there one piece of advice that you feel has truly helped you during your journey? Maybe a mission statement that you personally believe in, or something that you kind of like always go back to.
One piece of advice
Yes.
to give?
Yes. Share.
I mean, for me, I think it's what I feel so blessed because I found that thing, that passion, that thing that is like my purpose, the student and educator success, seeing light bulbs go on for kids, like that being like the thing that drives me, like find that passion, that purpose, and then find a big problem to solve. That's the other thing. Like we didn't try to solve a small problem, we're trying to solve like a massive problem, which is hard, but if you find a meaty problem and it's something that you're passionate about, I mean, it's easy. It's not work. I tell people all the time, I don't really go to work. And if I did, the day I go to work is the day I'm doing something else, guys. Trust me. If I'm working, I've told these guys, if I ever start like not liking this and this is not fun and I'm working and we're not changing the world anymore, like I'm done. You guys got that?
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. Let's give Lane Rankin a big round.